Hey, David.
Hey, Eric. Welcome to Sips Across the Sea.
Yeah, we're
It's
sipping again.
oh yeah,
We're
another little bite-sized, dram-sized version for you in
Yep.
celebration of Martini Day. Another one
Ooh.
of these random. I think you saw the list I sent you
That was quite the list.
of all the days.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some fun ones. Anisette Day, Creme de Menthe Day. But today, yeah, Martini Day. It's on Saturday, so it's the week after World Gin Day. World Gin Day, and then
Huh.
whatever the
There you
Saturday
go.
after that is. Today, though, a little bit different. Not
Mm-hmm.
just talking about the same old. The Martini on the Rocks, which
Yes.
is to me a cocktail in its own right, related to the Martini but different,
Yeah.
um, and is spelt very specifically Martini on the Rocks, but with a hyphen between each of the words.
Yeah. Okay.
Start with a rocks glass. I've got a nice sort of here we go, nice sort
Yep.
of
Got a
cut glass
tumbler
one
here.
there, sort of thing that you would usually enjoy a couple of fingers of whiskey in. But today
Right.
we're so we'll put some ice in there. You want, I think you want quite a bit of ice. Actually, that's my
Yeah.
view, and we'll talk about
Well,
ice.
that's the
But
thing. I picked a double rocks glass, even though the drink is probably not going to be that big.
yeah,
But that was my thought. I want more ice.
exactly. So then I would say pour an ounce to 2 ounces. Well, I don't know, 35 to 50 mils. I would say roughly
Yeah.
of gin. I've just poured it straight in there. I'm using the Herno Bjorn Fransen On Gin, which is a collaboration between Herno and the restaurant company, and this has a mix of Swedish and Asian botanicals.
Okay.
So you
Very
got
nice.
things like Sancho pepper, Buddha's hand,
I pulled down some Sipsmith London
classic.
Dry off of my gin shelf. I figured this probably make a nice martini on the
So
rocks.
yeah, I think it will. I'm wondering how old that bottle is. Well, I'm trying to
So if
think. Like,
you,
is it when it was barley based, or has it gone to wheat based? I'm not sure. It
oh,
might
that's
be
an
the wheat
excellent,
based one. Yeah, it might be the wheat based one.
that's an excellent question.
But
Oh, it says wheat.
wheat. There we go then. So
Yeah, was barley the original recipe?
yeah, a very long time ago. Very long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
And they, like, when it changed, they did a really good job. Like, very, very, like, you really had to be looking for it to be able to pick it out. It wasn't
right,
easy, you know. And once you
right.
mixed it, forget about it. So basically, at the moment, what I've got is a tumbler of gin and some ice, and then I'm
Yep.
going to add my vermouth to it. I'm kind of doing it to eye. I tend to like a slightly wetter, i.e., higher ratio of vermouth um, in my martini on the rocks, but you can do what you like. Just give it a
Mm-hmm.
little stir now. 50-50 works really well on the rocks as well, I
Yeah,
think. What
yeah.
I've done here is probably about 3 parts gin, 1 part vermouth, something like that, and I'm using the Noily Prat. There we go. And
Yep.
actually, in this case, rarely for me in a martini, I'm going to add a couple of dashes of orange bitters.
Yeah, okay. I have the extra dry Noli Pratt.
Ah, yeah, snap, because that's the one I'm using as well. Both
There we
have the
go.
extra in this great little bottle, which is just fabulous. So,
Mm-hmm.
although mine's there's about 2 inches left, so it's martini time this weekend. It's a good job. It's Martini Day on Saturday,
Right. Yeah. There you go.
which is also the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. So
Oh,
get down to
there you
Stonehenge and
go. Drink some martinis.
enjoy the. I don't know. They probably wouldn't appreciate that, but you could enjoy the spiritual nature of it all.
Right.
So here's your martini on the rocks.
Cheers.
Very basic. Doesn't need really any extra ingredient. In terms of
Mm.
operations, don't need to
Yeah.
shake it or anything. You're just
Yeah.
building it. So most places, if they've got the basic ingredients, you could go for a martini on the rocks. You could possibly even get away with a dry white wine, which I have done when I've been on the plane before.
Oh, uh huh. Yeah.
You need the
Yeah.
ice, but yeah, you can probably get away with it.
That's very nice. That's very nice.
So
Got a nice little tinkle
I'm
to
not
it.
100% sure, sort of exactly where it where it comes from. Other than I think it's a US invention because as we talked about before, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the UK is a desert. It's getting better, but it, for a long time was a desert of ice.
Yeah, we
Um,
love our ice over here.
yeah, we ice. So and I think the bits I've heard seem to suggest it's sort of 50s, so sort of post-war it became quite popular. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that it feels like there's probably some places where they were having the martini and it was getting drier and drier and drier,
Right.
and then in other places it was going the other way and getting more dilute, as it were, because of the use of the ice,
Right.
which I think seems to make sense. The bits that I can pick up, I know Robert Simonson has done some work and done quite a lot of writing on it. It seems like it's more popular, not necessarily San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco or Los Angeles or New York or DC, but some of the secondary, tertiary markets, the
Mm-hmm.
Midwest, those kind of places. Which I think it kind of makes sense. It is a more laid back drink. You can still enjoy the glassware, but you don't have the theatre, the presentation, the
Right.
ostentation as it can sometimes be, the
Right.
pretension maybe of a straight up martini.
Yeah. So when you had suggested this topic, I started looking around a little bit, see what I could find about Martini on the Rocks, and actually came across a Robert Simonson article in Punch. And in that, he interviewed a bartender or owner, um, and uh, he was talking with this guy who's in Wisconsin, and he
Hmm.
was saying that their house martini is the Martini on the Rocks. And part of the reason for that was they wanted something that was like a little bit different from other bars. But he commented that, and to your point, that like 50% of their orders were martinis on the rocks. Of the people who were ordering martinis, about half of them were getting them on the rocks. And he said that that kind of skewed a little bit older. So in general, some older people were ordering on the rocks, where some of the younger drinkers were getting a sort of traditional, like up, martini. So I thought that was interesting that there's a little bit of this like generational division and this like geographic sort of thing where it was seemed to be a little bit more popular in these like out, like you said, secondary, tertiary kind of cities.
Yeah. The other thing is for not all bars, and it again depends on a bar. Certainly, if you're going to a pub in the
Mm-hmm.
UK, um, you couldn't. They probably won't have martini glasses, but they'll have, if you're
Ah,
lucky, they'll have a rocks glass. And so a lot of
yeah,
places will have a rocks glass, but not much. So the other thing with the martini on the rocks is you don't need another glass
right.
to have it. In the same way, at home you wouldn't necessarily need to have the martini glass to have it. And then there's always the issues of washing stemmed glasses and all these kind of
Mm-hmm.
things. And some martini glasses are not very hardy at all, or they're
Right.
really big. I mean, that's the finding good martini glasses that are a good size, i.e., not too big, and then
Mm-hmm.
that can be used again and again is not the easiest thing in the world. And so, actually having a rocks glass that doubles for your old fashioned, for your Sazerac, for your Negroni,
Right.
for your whiskey sour, for your on the rock spirits,
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah. I, every once in a while, I'll be at a bar and see these like giant, like 6-ounce martini glasses. And it's just, they're so top heavy. It's like you feel you have the point of the stem glass, right, is to hold it by the stem, right?
Yeah,
So that your hand doesn't heat up the liquid. But with those giant
You're
V-shaped
cradle it
bowls.
like a brandy thing. Yeah,
Yeah, you have to hold it by the glass, but with above the stem, because otherwise you feel like the whole thing's kind of, the center of gravity is so high up, you have to put
it's
your
just
hand on
going.
the
You hear
actual
it's just going to
glass.
go snap, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, whereas we have our martini glasses. We got some small martini glasses from Cocktail Kingdom,
Mm.
and we like them. They're very hardy, and they're not too big. So
We
it's
had some great ones that we were using at the ADI competition as well, didn't we?
yeah, yeah. Those were like short little nubs,
Yeah,
right?
they were
There
great. There,
wasn't.
they were 1.5, 2 ounces, beautiful, just perfect size. Was it a
Yeah,
Lily? Something like that. I can't quite remember, but it was.
Liddy, I think, is
Yeah,
the
US company,
brand.
quite easy. I think they're on Amazon actually. I think
Yeah,
when we were looking at them, they are, and they're not very expensive either. That they are really nice um, martini glasses for home as well. Because then if you've mixed a jug of martini up or a shaker of martini, then you can share it between a couple of you, and then have the next drink rather than having to
right.
to go through that. So
Yeah,
um,
Liddy makes a really kind of a lot of like really basic glass designs that are usually really sturdy and durable, which is great. I know when I was just getting into drinking, I bought a bunch of glasses from them for like various beer styles and some cocktail glasses and things like that. They work great. But yeah, because like sometimes I got sent a very fancy martini glass um, from a company that was trying to promote it, and it's a lovely glass, but the stem is so thin.
oh,
I just like I I I almost don't enjoy drinking out of it because it hasn't broken yet, but it's so thin that I'm just like, I just snap this in my
yep.
hands if I gripped it too tight.
I am a fan of the utilitarian for sure. Although
Yeah.
my granddad also big fan of glassware. That's probably where I get it from. He liked the thin stuff. He liked the very
Uh-huh.
delicate
Yeah.
kind of thing. So he'd have like some wine glasses where he just like up, up, up. I'm washing those.
Right. Right. Well, that's the other thing too. It's like on a practical level, we so when Tia and I first got married, I inherited a bunch of dishware from my grandparents. And it's all like really lovely stuff, old. So it's like a lot of it was this ceramic plates made in Mexico. They were
Oh,
hand painted and then glazed.
lovely.
Super fun. Really liked them. But over the years, like, we had to hand wash all of them. And like slowly over time, like you drop a plate when you're washing it and one
There's
breaks and whatever,
chips.
right? And so it got to the point, like, especially when we had the boys, we're like, okay, we need dishes that we can just put in the dishwasher and not have to worry about hand washing, because we're at a point in life right now where it's like there's a lot of other stuff going on, so hand washing stuff is,
Yeah.
unless it doesn't fit in the dishwasher, we're just not using it. We've kind of put a lot of that stuff away. So it's the same thing with our cocktail glasses too.
Glasses.
It's like we've
Not the
moved
case
to
here. Absolutely
yeah,
opposite. It's all.
yeah.
I actually at the weekend, and hello to Stuart, and thank you for the storage. My friend Stuart came round and dropped off 13 boxes of glasses that I was storing at his house.
Oh my
They've been there.
word.
They were in his attic, but
Yeah,
for maybe 3 years, and so finally got through looking through what we've had there.
yeah.
But it's good because then finally I'm like, right now I know all the glasses we have. Now I can finally work out where everything's going to be, so I know
Hmm.
where it is.
So kind of related to that. My parents moved to Sacramento a few years ago, and so finally cleaned out their storage unit, which was full of a ton of stuff my mom inherited from my
Knickknacks, objet d'art,
grandfather. No,
treasures.
like giant furniture and things. My grandfather had this giant Victorian house in San Francisco, and so he had lots of old furniture that was very large, and So anyway, so she inherited a lot of the stuff, just had it in storage for years and years. Finally cleared it all out and they're moved to Sacramento. One of the things that they had stored in there for 30 years was a barrel, a giant wooden barrel full of cocktail glasses and mugs and
Oh,
like punch mugs and things like that.
yeah,
So it opened from the top of the
yeah.
barrel, and all the glasses were wrapped in newspaper and
Oh,
just
so it wasn't like
stacked.
a barrel cabinet. It was just
No.
glasses stored in a barrel.
Yeah.
It's a new one
Yeah.
on me. There's many things stored in a barrel, but not glasses.
Yeah. So the why they had so many glasses is so during World War II, my what would have been my great grandmother ran this. There was a name for it. I can't remember. It was basically a social club for officers during the war. So like people would come and like drink and dance to music and then because they were in San Francisco, so that was a port to get shipped off
Yeah, it's
to the
huge. Yeah,
Pacific. And so anyway, so she ran this place where so she had a ton of dishes and a lot of glassware for punches and highballs and all sorts of stuff. And so that's just been kind of sitting there. So now my parents have it, and I was looking at it, some of the glasses, very nice, not too dissimilar from like what Cocktail Kingdom has, what I have for a tumbler, but very elegant. And so eventually I'll get some of
nice.
that. But
Yeah,
right now we're not in need of
no, no,
a barrel
and they
full
do,
of
and they vary as
glass.
well. It is weird.
Yeah.
Glasses are hard things to buy, particularly online, because whatever it says is the size, almost
Right.
inevitably never is. So yeah, your thrift
Right.
stores, your places like that, they're good places to pick stuff up. In the UK, and in the US as well, the TK Maxx, TJ Maxx in the
Yeah.
UK, and occasionally like a Ross Dress for Less. Sometimes they have some very
Mm-hmm.
nice like bohemian crystal stuff, very cheap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
keep an eye. But you got to buy it when you see it because they ain't ordering it in for you, and it
Right.
might not be there next time.
That's right.
So here's a question for you,
Yeah.
James Bond.
Okay.
Big fan of his martinis, vodka martinis on screen, shaken
Right.
not stirred. So I do have a shaker here. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna just pour in some vodka.
Yep.
I'm gonna have this quite dry, so I'm gonna go for about 5-1 here. That was just house vodka there, and there you go into my little shaker here. Put the top on. Give it a little shake. I quite like. I was thinking about glasses for Martini on the Rocks. I also quite like a square. I couldn't really work out why, but I like the sort of squarer
Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah.
rocks glasses. Well, this is actually both. It's a square on the bottom and then round on the top. So anyway, so give this a
Best of
nice
both
shake.
worlds.
Imagine that you've just landed in Rio de Janeiro in the late
Mm-hmm.
70s, but really you're in France because that's where they filmed it. And you've
Right.
flown on the Air France Concorde to Rio de Janeiro. You just checked into your hotel. And there's a woman there. She's shaking a drink. This is in your hotel room. They put all your clothes away for you, which I always think is a bit weird. I don't leave my cases alone. I'll do it myself. I guess. So she's shaking it. She gives
Yeah,
it a
like
good
because
shake.
yeah, it's like I wouldn't mind like trousers and jackets and even button-down shirts. You could put those away, but the socks and the underwear, I'll deal with those.
The intimates.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're not a TSA agent, are they? Go back to, I don't know what it was, episode 1, episode 2, where you told that story. Anyway, she's given it a really good shake, which is
Yeah.
nice because generally in James Bond, shakes are rubbish. So this is Moonraker we're talking about.
Right. It's well because it takes too long otherwise. They
Yeah.
do a
But you can
1,
tell she's
2,
done a
and
good shake. She then
yeah.
takes the top off and she does that.
Right.
She just pours the whole contents, ice and all, into the glass. So another variation on the Martini on the Rocks, although it's been shaken first, also known as the dirty dump. And so she
Uh,
dirty dumped the martini into the rocks glass, which is quite nice. It kind of just gets you to where you end up. I mean, with your martini on the rocks, it just gets you there a little bit quicker. I'm
yeah.
intrigued as to how your drink has changed in the 10 minutes or 20 minutes or so that we've been chatting.
Yeah. Let me take a sip. It's a little bit more dilute, but really the flavor hasn't changed. I mean, I was a little bit heavy handed on the vermouth, so it's a little bit wet. It was like 2 ounces gin to 3/4 ounce of vermouth, and so at least I can really taste the vermouth in it, and so I get a hit of juniper and a lot of the vermouth coming through, and now it's just at that same profile mix is the same. I don't feel like the flavors have evolved much, but it's just a little less intense because
Yeah.
there's more water.
But I think, like, I don't know, when maybe 15 minutes ago when we made it, if you'd had a normal martini, I mean, you probably would have drunk it by now, but if you hadn't, it
Yeah.
would be way past its best, I think.
Right. Right.
I haven't actually got any here, but I do think that olives work really well. They work particularly well. I think that
Yeah.
savouriness works really well with
Yeah.
this drink. And if you enjoy a little splash of brine or like a dirty or filthy martini, also works really well
Mm-hmm.
in this sort of format. So there's our dirty dump, and then we're gonna have one more. Um, so this is I'm pulling the stops out a little bit on this one. I'm gonna be a bit fancier.
Ooh.
So we've got this nice thick based LSA
Yeah.
tumbler. I've got this nice big chunk of ice that
Cube.
I
Mm-hmm.
carved beforehand. Um, I've not actually really experimented whether or not it's better to put the vermouth in or put the vodka in, like which way round is the best. But
Right.
I
Because
always would
you
have thought
a while ago you did a whole like you had like a whole rubric thing of like for
for the Negroni,
Negronis.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it does
yeah.
make a
Like
difference.
this ingredient first, this one, and variations and
My gut, for whatever reason, is to put the spirit in first and then put the vermouth
yeah,
in. I guess the vermouth has got a higher. I would say that the vermouth has a higher density to the spirit, and so it's going to sink
right,
anyway. So you're going to get a little bit of a mix.
right,
And I think the main thing that you're putting in, being the vodka, I think you can just kind of splash in the vermouth and do it quite gently. I mean,
right,
I know the general tip for making cocktails is to put the most expensive ingredient in last.
right.
But depending on what you're using, it kind of depends with this. The vermouth
So
might be more expensive than the.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, if you're using Taka vodka, made of
Exactly.
Buffalo Trace, your Noli Prat's probably gonna cost more than that.
Well, and given that you can't get that Noli Prat in the UK, like, what's the relative cost? Had to come back
Right,
on a plane. So it's
right.
pretty expensive.
Yeah. Okay, so I just want to mention something because until very recently, I had heard multiple times this idea of like when you're in a bar, bartenders build drinks by starting with the least expensive ingredients and moving to the more expensive ingredients. And I was just like, okay, I never really thought about why that was, but then recently Tia mentioned to me that when she was taught bartending in San Francisco, the reason that they gave for that was because in case you mess up the drink and
Yep.
you need to dump it out, like you're not throwing out the most expensive part of the drink. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I was just like, okay, this is a thing people do. I'm not sure why. But and so that I was like, oh, that made a lot of sense. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I had heard that a lot, but never knew why. So
Oh
I don't
well,
know
yeah,
if that's
yeah. That
so.
is the reason. So,
Yeah.
um, we've got here. This is a Dima's vodka from the Ukraine,
Oh,
40% ABV, and it uses it's a mix of barley, wheat, and rye.
okay.
So I think it's going to be perfectly matched for a martini. So this is my Big Boss martini on the rocks. See, there's the question of ice of, do you want that ice melt or not? You're going to get some ice melt with this, and
Right.
it's going to keep it cold, but you're not going to get that same dilution that you're getting with those other
No.
drinks, which, depending on what you're looking for, might be desirable.
Right.
But that works very well. That's a very nice, like, in between.
Yeah.
So you've got it cold, you're getting a little dilution. Of course, I've not mixed it. Really, I just give it a little twirl in the glass. But
Mm-hmm.
you're getting the vodka, you're getting the vermouth. Particularly on a hot day like this, it's in the 30s. Don't feel like you have to drink it really quickly, which is good. And also, it means that you can um, have a martini on a hot day. The question is,
Yeah.
what happens when you lengthen it?
Oh, this is a good question.
As in, so sort of turn it into a martini highball.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Only one way to find out.
Yeah.
So I've just added some sparkling water to mine. That's my Demon's one. I had that. Slurping away.
Yeah. It's nice.
Again, it's very
Very
refreshing. I
light.
mean, I
Yeah.
understand. Like, there is something to be said for the power of a martini.
Right.
First, when it's really cold and everything's been perfectly made, and there's a reason
Right.
why it's sometimes known as the silver bullet. I know that's also another cocktail as well, but sometimes the martini has been known like that, and you can understand why, because when you want that very particular flavor and experience and texture, there's nothing else like it.
Right.
And so
Right.
then if that's what you're looking for, the idea of having it long and having it with ice doesn't really make any sense. But maybe that's good for the first one. But then
Mm-hmm.
subsequently, then maybe on the ice makes more sense. On the rocks makes more sense.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit easier. Yeah, you can just take it a little bit easier with it. Have a high proportion of vermouth potentially. Again, another potentially good way of getting through a little bit more vermouth, because I feel like for some people, like a 50-50 served up, so just in the cocktail glass, no ice, is still a bit of a stretch. But actually, maybe a 2-to-1 or a 50-50 with the ice melt, it just
Right.
mellows it a bit, makes it a little bit easier to drink.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I hadn't really thought about, to be honest, like Martini on the Rocks has never been really kind of in my thoughts of like, oh, I can use this as a way to sort of still get the flavors that I'm looking for, but just like a little bit different drinking experience. Like I talked about with the highballs and the
Yep.
gin water, right? It just changes the pace of your drinking a little bit. And because like the last time I was at a bar and had a martini, I ordered a 50-50, partly because it was still early in the day, in the afternoon. And so I didn't want like the big, powerful drink right at that moment, but I wanted that kind of flavor. And so I was like, well, 50-50 will give me a little less punch in terms of total alcohol, but give me that flavor that I'm kind of looking for. And it was very nice. But like, I now that you've, inspired me, like next time we're at Hatsi Tatsi, I'm gonna have to try a martini on the rocks and just see
Yeah,
how that goes.
they do a very good one. Do a very good one. And
Yeah.
I can also imagine. I know you talked about it last time. A favorite of yours, Boodles. I think that's going to be fantastic. On
Oh
there's
yeah.
something about, I think, the slightly more savoury gins that
Mm-hmm.
particularly lend themselves well to being on the
Yeah.
rocks. So because you've got that sage and rosemary, I think in Boodles, I think a gin mare would be fantastic for a
Mm.
martini on the
Mm-hmm.
rock. Can't quite put my finger on what the thing is, but
Yeah.
I just the feeling I get. And as I said, the same with the olives and that. So
Yeah.
well,
There we go.
martini on the rocks.
Yeah. Well, on this celebration of Martini Day,
Happy
cheers,
Martini
David.
Day and summer solstice, and cheers.
All
Until next
right.
time.
Until next time. Bye bye.